The following is a presentation of News Radio KMAN, your home for high school sports. This is Scoreboard Saturday on News Radio KMAN.
Well, we're back again, as we are every Saturday morning. News Radio KMAN, Scoreboard Saturday. And I am your host, Andrew J. Shaw, also known as AJ Shaw, here on News Radio KMAN. This show always brought to you by the great folks over at WTC Communication. WTC, keeping you connected with the fastest fiber network internet speeds. Get your home or business in the game online at WTCKS.com. That's WTCKS.com. WTC had a big announcement earlier this week where they'll be expanding network internet throughout Manhattan, which is a pretty big deal. So congratulations to the great folks at WTC who have been sponsoring this show for several years, and we always appreciate their help out on this show as we bring you the scores from across the area every single week from the Centennial League, the NCKL, the Mid-East League, and the Twin Valley League. But this week, a little bit of a special episode for you as we dive into our sub-state preview. We'll start out, of course, with the Centennial League. The brackets coming out this morning. We're going to try to go through the brackets. This is the first time I'm looking at the brackets since they came out. So it'll be a first time we're looking at them. I'm not going to be totally surprised because I've kind of had an idea of who's going to play who. There may be a few changes here and there depending on how the last few games went, but we're going to try to dive into that. We'll sit down with Wamego girls coach Brian McIntosh in our second segment, and then Rock Creek boys coach Justin Smith in our third segment. And then in our final segment, we'll receive another wrestling update from Troy Coverdale as he will recap what went down at the state yesterday. We'll also have more wrestling updates for you throughout the day here on News Radio KMAN. We'll have K-State basketball for you as they take on BYU a little bit later. And we'll also have K-State baseball as they play Game 2 of their series against Holy Cross. So a big sports weekend for you here on K-Man. So we'll start it off a little bit with high school basketball. We'll start with the Manhattan Indians. Their last game was on Tuesday as they took on Topeka Hayden. Topeka Hayden, one of the better teams in the state of Kansas, even though they end up finishing the season third in the Centennial League. Emporia won last night over Washburn Rural. They had already clinched the Centennial League. The Spartans now 18-1, 10-0 on the season as they win the Centennial League. K-State women girls, not K-State women. Manhattan girls, not a great way to finish the season as they dropped their final three games. All were very close games. They lost a 1-point contest to Emporia on the 13th. They lost a 6-point contest to a very good Washburn Rural team on the 16th, and then they lose by 13 to Topeka Hayden on Tuesday, which they end their season at 10-10. The last we looked, it looked like they would probably be a 6 seed in the sub-state brackets for the 6A West side of things. And I'm just going to tell you this right now. It is sometimes really hard to try to find these brackets for 6A. But as we dive in here to the 6A West, we view the brackets here for sub-state. There's a lot of things to go into it. But we're going to try to dive into some of these scores here really quickly before we dive into the brackets in our next few segments. But Topeka Hayden, they end up losing to them. Manhattan boys come back, though, respond with a nice victory. It was a very high-scoring game in that one. 77-70 the final score. So the Manhattan boys do finish their season on the right foot with a 12-8 record, 6-4 over Topeka Hayden, who really had a rough year. Their only win in Centennial League play was against in-town rival Topeka High last Friday. So they lose to Manhattan in a very high-scoring game. The Topeka Hayden girls, on the other hand, had a pretty good game. They go 16-3. They ended up winning that game against Manhattan. Topeka High boys, their season ends in kind of a rough loss in overtime, 67-64. But they go down to a Junction City team, and we talked to Nick Perez on the show last week, the head coach, who finished 18-2 and 9-1. the first ever Centennial League championship for the Junction City Blue Jays, who are one of our area teams. Congratulations to Nick Perez's team. They're probably going to be a 2 seed when we look at the sub-state brackets in our next segment. So a lot to kind of be proud of. They only lost 2 games, and surprisingly, their only loss in conference or league play was to the Manhattan Indians, that 65-64 loss to Manhattan last week. But a lot to be proud of for Junction City. It's been a great season. Last year, they actually made it to state. They ended up losing in overtime to the runners-up in the 6A championship last year to Blue Valley Northwest. But just a great team this year. I mean, Nick Perez's team was very solid throughout the year. Topeka High gave them a scare. They took them to overtime, but in the end, they come away with the 3-point victory in that one. Washburn Rural, another solid season for them. The girls didn't lose last night, as I mentioned, to Emporia, but Emporia is a very good team, and they're a team that you're definitely going to have to keep an eye on as you dive into the sub-state portion of the bracket in the 6A. I mean, they are not a team that you want to mess around with. Washburn Rural boys, even with their, kind of mediocre record, they still win 7 games in conference play. I mean, that's pretty darn good. They had a very good season outside of the record. I mean, they started 0-6. They lost their first 5 games. They lost 3 games at Prairie Village. They ended up losing the first league game to Junction City by 3, but then they go on a run. Beat Topeka Hayden, beat Topeka High. They go 2-1 in the Pittsburgh tournament. Then they come out of that tournament after losing to Olathe East. They beat Blue Valley. They beat Emporia. They beat Manhattan in overtime in a big game. They lose to Junction City at home, but then they come back and they win the next 3. So for Washburn Rural boys, they're going to be a threat in the playoffs. Even if their record may not stand out to people overall, that's a pretty good team going into the postseason. We'll talk more about Wamego girls in the next segment, but they had a bit of a scare near the end of the year. But in the end, they were able to, get a win over Concordia, 40-39. I have that score wrong in there for some reason. Let me just fix this really quickly because I have OCD sometimes on that stuff. But anyways, I fixed that. They had some injuries near the end. Lexi Hecht, as we know, she broke some fingers in her hand. She's going to be out the rest of the season. Riley Meinhardt, another one of their top players, she ended up tearing her ACL. That's just terrible to hear. And we, prayers to them both as they get onto the recovery from their injuries. But they pick up a win against Concordia. They don't win the NCKL. Clay Center does. But I mean, Wamego girls is another team you got to keep an eye on. I mean, remember, they started 5-1 in league play, ladies and gentlemen. Wamego boys, they picked up a big win over Concordia the other night, 52-41. That was a big win. That was a major win. They needed that one. Clay Center, the girls' side, did fantastic. Down the stretch, they got hot. They were sitting at 7-7 at the beginning of the month after they got blown out by Silver Lake. Sorry about that. But then they come back. They beat Republic County in a non-league game. They beat Marysville. They end up beating I said Marysville. They beat Wamego on the road in a major game. Beat Abilene twice. They lose a game to Concordia. But they end up winning the league, which is a big deal. 7-3 overall. Clay Center boys, they had a tough end of their season. They lost their last 3, but they were sitting in contention there for a while. Abilene boys, they end up winning the NCKL on the boys' side. They were just dominant all year. Didn't lose a game in league play. In fact, they, outside of the Hayes game on the 13th, they lost 1 game from the 26th of January to the end of the season. That's a hot team coming in, folks. They're one of the best teams in 4A. They're going to be a threat. Concordia girls, we mentioned, they got beat on Thursday to Wamego. That hurts because you don't win the NCKL title, especially because you beat Clay Center twice. Actually, you beat Clay Center once. I'm sorry. They lost to Clay Center on the 19th of December. But, you lose to Wamego by 1 at home. That stinks. But you're still a team that's going to be a threat coming in. Concordia boys are a threat. They ended up losing to Wamego too, but they're going to be a threat going into postseason. You never know with these teams who can get hot, who won't get hot. Chapman girls, 5-5. They've been able to kind of manage their own in league play. Marysville girls, very solid team. They have a losing record, but a 6-4 record in conference in league play. I'm sorry, I keep saying conference because where I'm from, it's called conferences, and K-State as well. But they're a team that you can't take lightly. Same thing with Marysville boys. They're 10-10 overall. Yeah, they have a losing record in league play, but you can't let them. You can't get down on them. Riley County, as we dive now into the Mid-East League, I'm just kind of going through here and reviewing the season. Riley County girls, I'm very impressed with what Kelsey Nelson has done. They lost a few players. They didn't get off to a great start, but this was a team that went to state last year in 3A. They got to go on the road on Tuesday to Rossville. We'll dive more into that later on in the show as we get into the Mid-East League stuff and we kind of dive more into where Rock Creek is sitting at and all that other stuff. But they beat St. Mary's. That's a tough team to beat. 25-24. It was not a high-scoring game by any stretch, but Riley County girls finished 12-8, 5-5. Great coaching once again by Coach Nelson. I mean, she really has put that team in a perfect position to be successful, even if they got to go on the road to Rossville. Riley County boys, they got to go on the road to Rossville. Their record not as pretty as the girls, but you just never know in postseason. Rock Creek boys, we'll dive more into them later on. We'll know a little bit more about their playoff situation in just a second. Silver Lake girls, fantastic. Remember we talked to their coach last week. They go 20-0. They blew out Wabaunsee the other night, 58-36. They go 20-0, 10-0 in league play. That's pretty darn good. How about Silver Lake boys? They're not a slouch either. I know the girls are getting a lot of the headlines, but the boys are 13-7, 6-4 in league play. They had dominant wins over Royal Valley and Wabaunsee last week. Won by 31 over Royal Valley on the road. Won by 15 over Wabaunsee. Rossville girls, another team you have to keep an eye on. They are a very talented team. 16-4 for the season, 8-2. They dominated Rock Creek the other night. It wasn't even close. Blew out Riley County last Friday. Rossville boys, another team you can't be quiet on. Record's not as out there as the girls' side is, but 10-8, 6-4 overall. You got Wabaunsee girls. They're 11-9. They're not great in the conference side of things, but they're still a team that's pretty darn good. Wabaunsee boys struggling. St. Mary's girls, they have a losing record in conference, but they're a much better team than that league record says. Much better team. Boys, much better than their league record says. They're 13-7. They're not a slouch by any stretch of the imagination, ladies and gentlemen. They're a very good team, and that's the important thing to remember. All right, when we come back, we'll talk with Wamego girls coach Brian McIntosh. I've been plugging in a bunch. We'll also dive into the sub-state brackets. It's all coming up next on News Radio KMAN Scoreboard Saturday, powered by WTC Communications. Well, I lied. Not really, I didn't lie. I ended up being wrong. So the brackets are not out yet for 4A, 5A, and 6A. So what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of dive into where teams are going to be sitting at in this little prediction I get. By the way, Charles Cheney at the Butler County Times is fantastic on this. These aren't fully accurate. And again, I just want to preface, these are not the official standings. We'll probably know more in the day, and we'll dive more into it next week. I apologize. I thought they'd be out. I've been looking everywhere, and they're just not out yet. Now, 3A is out. That's how we know where Riley County is going to be at, so we will get into that. That's been released already, and we can dive into that more when we get into Rock Creek, Riley County, that kind of stuff. We'll start out with Wamego. We sat down, of course, yesterday with Coach Brian McIntosh. Right now, it's looking like in this bracket, and this could end up being wrong, but it looks like Wamego may play Chanute. They could also play Lewisburg. There is a possibility they play Lewisburg. Right now, Ottawa is lined up to play Lewisburg out of the East. That is a possibility. Rock Creek girls, on the other hand, are expected to potentially match up with Bishop Miege, who's very good. And I think most people that know the Kansas City area, Bishop Miege is very talented. They've won a lot of state championships, both boys and girls. Fort Scott, the number one team on the east side. By the way, welcome into Scoreboard Saturday. If you're just joining us, News Radio KMAN, WTC Communications, our sponsor. I'm AJ Shaw, your host. But right now, it looks like Wamego is going to play Chanute. That's what I'm looking at right now. Again, that could be wrong. I could be totally wrong about that. They could play Lewisburg. There is a possibility Lewisburg is their opponent, but it looks like right now they have Chanute. That's what I'm seeing on my thing. Now, when we talk with McIntosh, he thinks it's going to be Lewisburg. It could be Chanute. We don't know, but we talked with Brian McIntosh on the yesterday, and here's his thoughts on his team going into Substate. Joined now by Wamego girls basketball coach Brian McIntosh. Coach, thanks again for joining us. You finished up your season on Thursday, last night when we're talking, with a big win over Concordia. You finished your season with 15 wins, a 6-4 record in conference play. You now head into Substate. At the time of this interview, we still don't know who that opponent will be, but it's believed that you guys will probably play Chanute on the east side of the 4A bracket for Substate. Talk a little bit about the last game with Concordia. What kind of stood out to you in that one?
Well, we've gone through quite a bit of adversity, just with injuries, with Riley Meinhardt tearing her ACL, and Lexi Hecht, she broke 2 of her fingers, so she's out for the season. So, we lose our 2 most experienced players, and we've been looking here in the past couple of weeks for people to step up and step into those roles. And so, I've been very impressed with, just how the girls have kept coming back to work, even with the losses that we've had, and still working hard and trying to get things turned around. And, I think last night was, a great step forward for this group, where they gained some confidence and beating a very good Concordia team.
Yeah, Concordia definitely was having a great season. You talk about injuries. Obviously, you lose Lexi Hecht, who was one of your better players. She tried to come back, I know, for a couple of games, if I'm not mistaken. And you lose Riley Meinhardt. Who's had to kind of step up for you with the absence of those 2 experienced players?
Yeah, everybody has. We've tried a lot of different lineups. Bringing in freshmen, we've had 3 freshmen getting some minutes, and then some sophomores and juniors stepping up. And so, we all know that no one's going to replace Lexi or replace Riley, but we're hoping to try to do it as a team, and everybody has to step their game up a little bit. And I think it finally started resonating last night a little bit. Sarah Springer is our lone senior now playing, and, she stepped up into a role playing point guard, and Soraya Pittenger-Reed has stepped up. Bella Wilbur has stepped up, Greer Panzer. All these kids have stepped into different roles, and, it's just been big for us. And then, like I said, we have 3 freshmen that are, getting kind of thrown into the fire and trying to learn on the go. And, it's been tough, but, they're coming around. And like I said, the confidence is really coming through as of last night.
You mentioned Soraya. She had a big game against Concordia, 17 points, 4 boards, 3 steals. Where have you been primarily playing her at, the forward position?
No, she plays guard for us.
Okay.
She's kind of a lockdown defender for us.
Mm-hmm.
She always guards their best player, their best guard, and she's being asked to score now. And we challenged her at halftime to come out and be aggressive and get to the rim. And so it was really neat experience for her to get the game-winning shot there, and she drove it in hard and got to the rim and got fouled and finished it and completed the 3-point play and, put us up by 1, which ultimately won it for us. So I'm very pleased with her, and I'm very happy for her because she's a great kid and she works hard at it. And, she takes coaching and, she applied it, and it was great to see her have that success.
As I mentioned, they haven't determined yet who's going to be your opponent. We'll probably know more by the time the show airs on Saturday. But right now, it looks like you'll be a 4 seed. You're going up, as it's projected, you might go up against Chanute. Tell us what you know a little bit about them, if you have a little bit of experience with them in the past.
Well, I think the way it looks now is we'll probably end up playing Lewisburg. They won, and
all right.
Unless Chanute would win significly, they may jump, but
yeah,
it's looking more like Lewisburg right now. And
okay.
We actually played Lewisburg 10 games ago, right after our tournament, and so we're a little familiar with them. We beat them beat them then. But they've improved a lot over the course of the season. And so, when it gets to postseason play, you better be locked in and ready to play hard and compete because, it's win or go home.
Well, and you've mentioned it, obviously, with injuries, you have a lot of younger players out there. How are you getting them prepared for kind of the atmosphere that's Sub-State in the playoffs bring?
We don't do anything differently all season. We come in and we practice hard and, we watch film and, we go through things with them that the opponent may do. And so they've been doing these things all season. Their roles have changed a little bit, so maybe their focus is more. But we just try to come in every day and work extremely hard and be very detail-oriented. And, hopefully when the postseason gets here, that carries over. This will be the first postseason for, all of these girls that are playing significantly. And so, it's just an opportunity for them to learn and to grow. What I love about it is, we potentially have 2 home games. We will have that first one at home. And, as long as we take care of business there, we would play, the Sub-State Championship at home too. And I think that gives them a lot of comfort because they love playing at home, and we have a terrific following.
Well, that's big too. I mean, when you're having that, you have that chance to play at home in front of a friendly atmosphere instead of having to, go on the road to a place that you haven't been to before or you're not familiar with. So that's obviously a big importance. You look at some of the teams. I mean, you got some good teams at the top. If you play Lewisburg, they're definitely going to give you a challenge, but you got, as you get kind of deeper into Sub-State, you got Fort Scott, who's really good, Bishop Miege is really good, Ottawa is really good. So a lot of tough teams definitely on your side of the bracket for Sub-State.
Yeah, so like the way it works in 4A, you have 4 Sub-States basically. So, if we did take care of business against Lewisburg, then, we would probably play Labette or Holton next to go to state. And, traditionally 2 really good programs. And, we haven't had a chance to, look at them. We try to take one game at a time. And so we'll be locked in on Lewisburg. But, as long as we take care of business, we like our chances, playing at home and playing against many of those guys.
We were talking about it a little bit before we got into the interview, but the NCKL was crazy this year. I had a bunch of teams kind of coming down to the end there with, who was going to end up being the champion. You fell a little bit short, unfortunately, but in the end, were you doing a little bit of scoreboard watching, or were you just kind of just paying attention to what your team was trying to do?
We started out the league 5-0, and then, we have our injuries, and, for 2 weeks, we're going through the gauntlet of, the top teams in the league. And at that point, we really weren't trying to focus on them. We were trying to focus on how we wanted to play, what positions each person was going to play, what we were going to run. And so it's almost like the season started over. And so it was kind of back to square one for 2 weeks. And, I feel like now we're, getting into a little bit of a groove, with where kids need to play and how they need to play. So, I just, sometimes you worry about those things, but in this case, we really didn't because we were so focused on how to get these kids going in the right direction.
Yes. Well, Coach, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and it's been a pleasure to get to cover you this season, and looking forward to see how your team does in Sub-State, and hopefully we can talk down the road, and hopefully it's in the lead-up to a state championship.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time and the coverage.
Head coach Brian McIntosh, Wamego girls basketball coach. Coming up next, we'll sit down with Rock Creek boys coach Justin Smith here on News Radio KMAN. We're back here on Scoreboard Saturday, News Radio KMAN. AJ Shaw, your host on this Saturday. Of course, we're brought to you by the great folks over at WTC Communications. WTC, keeping you connected with the fastest fiber network internet speeds. Get your home or business in the game with WTC online at WTCKS.com. By the way, I don't know if you knew this or not. Maybe you did because you heard the ad break, or maybe you didn't because you're just tuning in. But we're giving away an all-expense paid trip next February to Cabo San Lucas. 8 days and 7 nights, a 2-bedroom beachfront condo at Villa La Valencia. I know I'm going to get yelled at now by my mom because I mispronounced San Lucas. I know she's going to go, oh, you said it wrong again, because that's what she does every week, even though I think I've been saying it right, but okay. Plus a flight for 2 out of Manhattan Regional Airport. Yesterday we had Dave G. from K-Rock out at Parker Hannafin, who was our sponsor this week. For people who are signing up, 10 instant finalists got drawn, which means you're ultimately in the finals. So you may get an opportunity to get an all-expense paid trip next February to Cabo. This Villa La Valencia, I'm told, is beautiful. Beautiful. Jerome Tang is vacation there. It's great. Next week, our sponsor will be Carpet One of Manhattan. So go check them out. Carpet One of Manhattan also sponsored our game of the week for football over on our other sister station, B1047. Great sponsors, Carpet One of Manhattan. We appreciate all of our sponsors who are helping us out on this trip. But BriggsAuto.com bringing you this passport to Cabo San Lucas. Jerome Tang has been there before. And, yeah, I'm going to get screamed at again. You said the name wrong. I'm sorry. I thought I said it right. Is it San Lucas? Fine, whatever. Anyways, I apologize to my mother for embarrassing her on the air. I really do. Anyways, we're going back in now to basketball. In this segment, we're sitting down with Rock Creek boys coach Justin Smith. We'll get into him, and we'll get with him in just a second. His team currently in this bracket, and again, things could change. They could either play Independence, who's up against Baldwin, or they could play Bishop Miege. And we talked a little bit about Bishop Miege. We also talked about his team, who are the winners of the Mid-East League. The final year that league is a thing. It's going to be going away after this season. And we had an opportunity to sit down with Coach Smith and hear his thoughts on his team as they head into Sub-State. Joined by Rock Creek head coach Justin Smith, whose team picked up the Mid-East League title this year on the boys' side, finishing 16-4 and 8-2. Coach, first off, congratulations on the league title. I'm sure you got to be very happy and proud of your team.
Yeah, we are. Anytime that, especially in the last, year of the Mid-East League, that you can do that, and anytime you win league titles, great. But especially because the league is obviously disbanding and not going to be anymore. It meant a lot to our community and our kids to be able to do that in the last year that it exists.
You finished your season out with against Rossville. You ended up falling by 7, but it was a close ball game throughout. Take me through how that game kind of went. What kind of stood out for you in that matchup as you head into postseason?
Yeah, Rossville's really talented. I mean, they have 5 guys that they start that are as good as 5 guys as we've seen all year long. And so to go there and we beat them the first time, and then the second game, we didn't shoot the ball very well. We didn't take care of it very well. And honestly, we got down I think we were down at one point 17-2 and kind of climbed back and took a lead in the second quarter. And it's back and forth from there. And honestly, we just didn't make enough plays down the stretch to finish out the game. But, it's proud of our kids' resiliency. The community, it was great. They came out. It was a really high-level game. A lot of people there. And it was great for our community to do that. But, it was one of the things that I'd like to really play better down the stretch there. But just kind of happened that way that we just didn't make enough plays, and they did.
As you head into postseason, what do you think has been this team's biggest strength throughout the season that you are looking most forward to as you head into the playoffs for Sub-State?
Well, the big thing that we've talked about all year long is I feel like this group really defends, we really rebound, and just the effort level is always there. And I say that in the games here that we've not been successful in. I thought we've lacked that a little bit. And so I'm hoping that we can kind of get, it's a new season, we're 0-0, and we kind of get that fire back a little bit because, if no matter what, we're going to host both games. If we are able to win the first Sub-State game, we're going to have a chance to play home again because we'll be high enough seed. And I hope playing at home and hosting a Sub-State gives us some motivation and some desire to come out and and be ready to go on next week.
So, obviously, when we're talking, it still hasn't been determined yet. We'll probably know by tomorrow morning who your opponent will be. But right now, what I have, it says it has you as a 3 seed, which means you would be playing Bishop Miege. Tell me a little bit about them. Do you know a lot about them? Have you kind of looked at them in the lead up to this game?
We have some film. There's still a couple of scenarios. We'll either play Bishop Miege or we'll play Independence, one or the other. The thing about Bishop Miege, and again, being a private school and being in the Kansas City area, they only play in 5 and 6A schools. So I truly think they're probably one of the 4 or 5 best teams on the east side. Even though their record's 4-14 right now, they're playing the Blue Valley schools, the Shawnee Mission schools, and all those really high level schools that are in the Kansas City area. And really the wins that they've got are the ones that they're playing, your 4A schools. So it's just one of those things that it doesn't matter what their record is, because they're going to be talented, and they're going to expect to win, because now they're playing against a level of competition that is at the 4A level, when they're used to playing 5 and 6A powerhouses in the Kansas City area all year.
And, you had a bit of an experience of playing some pretty good teams in the Burlington tournament. I know we talked a little bit about that when we last spoke. You played Burlington, you played Sabetha, even Paola, who you were able to beat handily. You said you still had a team there that was a pretty tough team to play. Yeah,
and I feel like we can compete against anyone. I really do, especially at the 4A level. I think we will be ready to go, and we'll have an opportunity to be successful in that game if we end up getting them. It's just the mindset, everybody hears about Bishop Miege, and everybody hears about how great they are, private schools, and won all these state championships. We got to get over that middle hurdle first if we end up playing them, just making sure that we understand that we can compete against anybody. But our schedule has been tough. I know if you look at the Mid-East League, and Rossville's 14-6, and Silver Lake was 12-8 or whatever it was, but those 2 teams were really talented teams. They're long, they're athletic, and St. Mary's the same way. They have some real talented kids. So it hasn't been like our schedule has been real weak. I really feel like we've played some really good teams and have beat some really good teams. And so I think we're ready and prepared, and I think hopefully we've had some kids that have played in sub-state finals over the last couple of years, and so hopefully that experience as well continues to build off that.
When you look back at some of those previous games, what are some of the lessons that your team learned from that they could take into the sub-state this year?
The big thing we talk about is playing at our pace and our style. I really thought over the last big games that we've lost here down the stretch, we really got taken out of our pace. People have really zoned us. That's one of the things. They really tried to slow the pace down. They played zone. It's just, and then we haven't shot the ball well. And so against the zone, if you're not able to shoot the ball well, and you really struggle with pace and all that, it's really hard to be successful. We still defended pretty well at a high level in the 4 losses. We've still held people around 50. We just haven't been able to score. And so we went through a stretch there that we had some downtime. But I hope we learn from that and or have an opportunity to learn and understand that what it's going to take to be successful moving forward, and learn from our mistakes.
Well, even with the last 2 losses still, your team started 8-0. Your defense continues to really just hold teams. You mentioned it. You haven't given up over 60 points or 60 or more points since the Burlington tournament. So your defense just continues to play at a really high level, even with this recent lull with a couple losses.
Yeah, and the big thing is kids are, for the most part, we're being physical, we're rebounding the ball, we're keeping people out of the lane, we're making people into shooters. And, we've been good on that aspect of it. And so one thing we talk about all the time as a program is defense travels. And no matter how well you shoot the ball or don't shoot the ball, that's what's kept us in games here recently, is even when we shot the ball really poor, we're still in it because we'll defend. And so I'm really proud of the group on buying in on that aspect of it. And I think we're giving up in the low 40s for points per game. And it's one of the better defensive teams that I've coached.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, it's been a pleasure getting to cover your team this year. We appreciate the time again, and hopefully we can talk down the road in the lead up to a state championship.
I appreciate the coverage.
Rock Creek boys coach Justin Smith, as his team will be in the postseason. We still don't know who their opponent will be. We'll probably know more later today, but we're thinking it's going to be Bishop Miege, possibly Independence. Regardless, you never know in postseason. All teams are tough regardless of their record. We'll dive in really quickly. Actually, we'll do that next segment. We'll dive in to what's going on with Frankfort and Blue Valley, the Rams and the Tigers. Frankfort girls, they had a bye this week since they're number one seed, but Frankfort boys were able to pull off an impressive win in their playoff game against Washington County. Same thing with Blue Valley boys, who were going up against Pike Valley on the road. We'll get into that, plus we'll have a wrestling update from Troy coming up in our final segment. News Radio, KMAN. We're back here on Scoreboard Saturday, News Radio KMAN, on this Saturday, the 24th of February, 2024. I'm your host, AJ Shaw. Of course, our show brought to you by the great folks at WTC Communications. WTC, keeping you connected with the fastest fiber network internet speeds. Get your home or business in the game with WTC online at WTCKS.com. That's WTCKS.com. They announced a big expansion. Going to be expanding internet connection in the city of Manhattan. So congratulations to the great folks at WTC on that announcement. They announced it on Wednesday. It was Wednesday. I apologize. I thought it was Tuesday for a second. But yeah, Wednesday was when they announced it. And really a cool thing that they ended up doing. So here in our final segment, we'll dive into what went down in the playoffs for Frankfort and Blue Valley. Frankfort girls not playing this week. They will be they're on a bye. They'll be since they're the number one seed in 1A Division 1, the Mankato Rock Hills substate. So they'll be playing next week. But Frankfort boys had a pretty dominating win over Washington County on Thursday, winning 44-19 in the substate quarterfinals. So they will move on to play Osborne next Thursday in the semifinal. And then, if they can win that, they'll move on to the sub-state final, which would be next Saturday. Osborne, a 2 seed, they had a bye. So Frankfort will be on the road. That's going to be a 7:30 tip for Mankato Rock Hills High School next Friday. So any folks out there that are interested in checking out the Frankfort boys, head on out there. They'll be. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong one here. That's the girls one. I apologize. I was looking at the boys one. I thought I was looking at the boys one there for a second. They are taking on Osborne. Osborne girls are the number 2 seed. They have a bye. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. That was. It's been a slow morning for me. I apologize for that. Let me just pull up the boys here really quick, and we'll get that corrected very quickly. So, Osborne is actually the 1 seed, and that will be next Thursday. All right, I got it right this time. Thursday, they'll be taking on the number 1 team, Osborne. That's a 6 o'clock tip next Thursday. If you want to see the Frankfort girls, on the other hand, I thought I had it up here. I backed out of it. Frankfort girls will be taking on either Washington County or Mankato Rock Hills. That is a 6 o'clock tip next Friday. And Frankfort girls, as I mentioned, they have a bye. But looking pretty good right now for Frankfort girls. Brian Ebert's team is pretty good. They are pretty good. And that's not a surprise at all. We had a feeling going into the year that they were going to be pretty good because they usually are pretty good. And that was pretty much all that was needed in that assessment. I mean, they are a pretty darn good team. Osborne on the boys' side, very good. That's going to be a tough game for Frankfort boys. They're going to definitely have to come out and play their best ball game next Friday. And yes, I got that correct this time. Over in Division 2 for Class 1A, you have Blue Valley boys. They picked up a huge win over Pike Valley the other night, 64-47, and they'll be playing Axtell next week. Axtell boys, remember we talked to Jason Tynan's team back in January when we did a TVL tournament preview. Axtell boys are no slouch. That is going to be an insanely difficult game. And I'm not saying Blue Valley is going to lose. Blue Valley is having a great season. We talked with their head coach last week, Blake Frantz, great guy to talk to, and we appreciated him coming on the show, and hopefully we can talk to him more down the road if he's out there listening. But that's going to be a tough game for sure. Over on the other side, you got Hanover and Lynn. Hanover and Lynn, those are two other teams that are very good. Lynn absolutely blew out Southern Cloud the other night. 60-point win. Hanover beat Junction City St. Xavier. That's not Junction City High School. That's Junction City St. Xavier. That's a different school. 78-32. This is going to be interesting. I really love this bracket, by the way. This is a good bracket. These are all TVL teams outside of Southern Cloud, JC St. Xavier, and Pike Valley. You got Axtell, you got Blue Valley Randolph, you got Hanover and Lynn. It's a TVL Final Four in the sub-state. This is huge. And you got some great ball games. And if you're out in the Randolph area, out here in Riley County, go to those games. Blue Valley Randolph is going to be the road team playing at home. It's kind of like when Tampa Bay was playing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I'm not going to go further into that game for Chiefs fans. I'm sure they don't want to remember that. They just want to live off the high of the Super Bowl past, the Super Bowl championships they've had in recent years. All right, I've been plugging for most of the show here today that we would have a wrestling update for you. Yesterday, the finals for wrestling. Troy Coverdale has that for you.
As the day started on Friday, Manhattan High had 13 wrestlers still in action on the brackets at the state wrestling tournament in Park City. At the end of Friday, they still have 9. 2 to wrestle for state titles on Saturday. Ezekiel Witt at 113 pounds, Caleb Hutchinson at 120 pounds. Also in the semifinals at 126, Cameron Coonrod suffered a defeat, as did Ben Ur at 157 pounds. At 190, Landon Dobson suffered a fall to Caleb Sharp of Olathe Northwest. And at 215, Raymond Gary Hernandez was dropped to the backside of the bracket with a semifinal loss as well. In consolation round 3 Friday afternoon, Jameel Agnew kept his season alive with a victory, as did Logan Lagerman at 144 pounds. Clayton Frayne recovered from his late Thursday night loss at 285 pounds to win by fall over Braden Shin of Olathe West. The only wrestler eliminated in the consolation rounds, Max Evans Pryor of Manhattan, as he fell to Griffin Bohannon of Junction City at 175 pounds. The Indians find themselves in third place, quite a race atop the team standings. Mill Valley leading the way with 142 points. Washburn Rural has 139.5. Manhattan 139 going into Saturday's action. In the girls' tournament, Manhattan Sage Rosario will be the only Indian wrestling for a title. She gets a shot at an unbeaten season, having swept her 3 155-pound matches through the first 2 days, all by fall. The Indians also with 2 wrestlers on the consolation side of the bracket still on Saturday. At 120 pounds, Kayla Kramer will wrestle in the consolation semis on Saturday after suffering a defeat to Ella Weber of Shawnee Mission West earlier in the day. And at 140 pounds, Elena Silfer kept herself alive with a consolation round 3 victory over Olivia Stevens of Shawnee Heights. In 4A, the Wamego boys have 3 wrestlers still alive on Saturday, all on the consolation bracket. At 138 pounds, Knox Karnowski. At 150, Thomas McIntyre. At 215, Jake Meyer. 106 pounds, Harry Costa had his season ended in the consolation round 3 action by Braden Lunstra of Augusta. Meyer and McIntyre both suffered semifinal losses to fall to the backside of the bracket. Rock Creek 157-pound wrestler Aiden McKinney saw his season end in the 3rd round of consolations as he suffered a decision to Dalton Evans of Ottawa. At the 3-2-1A boys tournament, Riley County's Caden Gutch will wrestle Saturday, having gained a pair of Friday wins at 144 pounds. At the 4-1A girls tournament, Wamego's Peyton Brazel was eliminated in the 3rd round of consolations by Carolina Northrop of Stockton at 100 pounds. Rock Creek's Brooklyn Bernheide was sent to the consolation bracket at 125 with a semifinal loss to Jill High of Augusta. She'll be the only Mustang wrestling on Saturday. For Scoreboard Saturday, I'm Troy Coverdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coverdale. Great stuff, Manhattan and all the others. And, of course, Troy will have more wrestling updates for you throughout the day. Next one will be coming up at 9:30. We'll have one for you at 10:30, one for you at 11:30 before K-State men's basketball. And then we'll have some throughout the baseball game today. So tune in at the end of the 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 8th innings, and we'll have a bunch of recaps for you because today is the championship. A lot of guys coming to be in the wrestling thing as we're recapping what's going on at state this weekend. A lot of great wrestlers, and that's always fun. I always love wrestling state stuff. I went down there when I was in high school a few times down to the Illinois championship, and boy, they were always fun to watch. They got intense down there, man, for sure. But we appreciate Troy, and again, Troy will be back at 9:30 with an update for you, and we'll have updates throughout the day here on News Radio KMA. And like I said in the beginning of the show, it's a big sports day going up for us here on K-Man. Big sports weekend in general. We got basketball later. We got K-State baseball. They were able to pick up a huge win yesterday. High-scoring game, 17-11 over Holy Cross. It was a little nervous there in the beginning. Holy Cross had twice in that game 2 4-run leads. They were up 4-0 after a half and 6-2 after 2.5. But K-State comes back, and Matt Walters and Craig Wilson will have the call for you later today here on K-Man. 3:30 pregame with a 4 o'clock first pitch from Toynton Family Stadium as the Cats look to go to 4-2. The Bat Cats look to go to 4-2 on the season. That's the music. It's been a pleasure as always. We'll be back again next week, same time, same place, 8 o'clock here on News Radio KMAN for more Scoreboard Saturday, more interviews, more standings, more scores, and a lot more high school sports for you coming up next Saturday here on Scoreboard Saturday. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. Enjoy this nice weather. It's going to be a beautiful weekend. Go Cats.